So, moving on now to a story that you were desperate to cover last month. Technically, this story had come to the world attention just before we were recording September's Watching Brief, but I insisted that we wait until the month that it actually came
You beat me down. You were horrible and insisted that because yeah. Shall we tell people what the story is?
Yeah, yeah.
I think it's one of the most exciting, fun archaeological stories I've seen in a long time because it works on so many different levels. So you tell people what was it you wanted to keep back for this month?
Well, it is the story that got lots of people very excited. It is the story of a young lady, a little girl, on a trip to a lake, and she discovered. Just as her father was calling her back from the water, that at her knees there was something sticking out of the ground, and she tugged on it, and found that she was holding in her hands a pre-Viking sword. She had pulled a sword from a lake, and this got people across the world very, very excited, saying that perhaps now she is by rights, the rightful Queen of Sweden or something, drawing on the Arthurian myth and legend, and it was very pleasant. And actually, some other people I've seen have been saying that maybe this will start her on a career in archaeology. After all, this is basically the find of a lifetime for some archaeologists.
Yes. Well, let's give her a name check. She's called Saga Vanacek,
That's
and
it.
Saga in itself is a very resonant name at the moment in anything Scandi because people will think of Saga Nören from the Bridge thriller series. So, but she's. Saga Vanacek, she did an interview with a journalist called Moya Sana, which was published in The Guardian, and it's delightful. So this is Saga being channeled through Moya. But she said, every summer my parents, my 6-year-old brother and I go to stay in a cabin by the lake called Widerstern in Turnö in southern Sweden, not far from where we live. I build sandcastles on the beach or find rocks to skim across the water and see how many times I can make them bounce. Mama says she used to play and swim in the lake when she was little too. And then she goes on, I waded into the water. This is on the 15th of July. I waded into the water because it was very soft on my skin and refreshing and a little bit cool, but not too cold. It was a nice feeling because the sun was shining and it was very hot. Daddy was begging me to rush so he could watch the World Cup final. But I like to take my time about things, so I ignored him. I was crawling along the bottom of my lake on my arms and knees, looking for stones to skim, when my hands felt something long and hard buried in the clay and sand. I pulled it out and saw that it was different from the sticks or rocks I normally find. One end had a point and the other had a handle, so I pointed it up to the sky, put my other hand on my hip and called out, "Daddy, I found a sword." As, as simple as if that's a reasonable reputation, it's wonderful. And then this gets very delightful and very Scandinavian. Again, even more Scandinavian. I felt like a warrior, but Daddy said I looked like Pippi Longstocking.
Well, I also like the fact that her instinct was to pose as well. I thought that was quite funny.
That's right.
Yeah.
Absolutely, exactly. No, it's wonderful. But and again, it's such a delightful Swedish story because apparently her mother and her grandmother were all sat outside their chalet having afternoon fika, which and again anyone knows about Scandinavian culture, that's coffee and cake. And it's a bit of a ritual. So and then she adds that they showed it off to the friends. People thought it looked like a Viking sword, and she adds, "Daddy didn't get to watch the football in the end."
Oh.
But
Okay.
he did do the right thing and showed it to an archaeologist, who apparently described the find as sensational. I think that's an understatement.
It is an absolutely gorgeous sword. It compares quite favourably to very, very early Viking age.
That's right.
The funny thing is that in Scandinavia compared to Britain, their Iron Age, or what they class as Iron Age, lasts much longer. We sort of arbitrarily call part of our Iron Age Roman Britain, because the Romans were an Iron Age culture, even though we like to pretend that they were super civilized and gave us, everything that we hold dear in life. They were Iron Age, and broadly speaking, when the when the Roman period ends, that's roughly when the Iron Age Viking transition occurs in both
Yes.
places. But
Yes.
throughout that time, what would become a Viking sword was being developed in parts
Yes.
of Scandinavia. So this is that sort of transitional period, and it very much fits with the style. The sword is about 80 centimeters long. It has a gorgeous profile. You can tell that the pommel and the grip would have worked quite nicely in terms of both as a aesthetic, but also to hold. And I wonder if any additional research might come up with, or analyses might come up with any other details about how, for example, the handle was constructed, and if it had what sort of wrapping it had, and this kind of thing, or if the
Well,
pommel had any inlays.
I'm sure. I'm
Mm.
sure the work will be ongoing. I mean, the photograph is credited to the Jönköpings Museum,
Mm.
and I'm sure our Swedish colleagues will be having a field day with this. It's a wonderful find
Mm.
under any circumstances. Um, Interesting that in the description of Saga's find, it mentioned that the water level was much lower than normal in the lake, which may account for why it hadn't turned up before. And in
Mm.
fact, subsequently, the archaeological team that investigated it did find a number of other objects in the area. Now, whether again we don't know yet whether these are accidental deposits or whether they're ritual deposits or what. And you alluded to the idea of the Lady of the Lake, which is a
Mm.
trope in Northern European, particularly Arthurian legend, and
Mm.
the idea of swords in lakes. We've seen the famous deposits from the deposits um, in the River Thames, and also at Flag Fen in Cambridgeshire,
Mhm. Mhm.
Peterborough, near Peterborough. So we're dealing with something which has a long tradition in Northern European culture and religion, and so
Also, I think Llyn Cerrig Bach, I think in
indeed
Wales.
the famous
Mm.
so-called slave chain
Mm.
and
Mm.
other objects from Llyn
Yeah.
So yeah, but it's nice to be able to report a sort of happy archaeological story where it's not been found by a metal detectorist, and because it hasn't got any gold or silver content, it's going to be sold to a private collector or anything like that.
Mm.
It's an archaeological find that is absolutely delightful. It's been treated the right way as part of and it's been adopted already into the national culture. This idea of
Mhm.
young Saga, the Queen of Sweden. It's a
Well,
wonderful story.
also as well, I suppose I'm quite drawn to the fact that it's a great way to highlight other eventual fates for this sort of material as well. I like that. I mean, in some respects, I love that she is called Saga because she's
Mm,
added to the sword Saga. But the fact
yeah,
that sometimes swords and often metallic goods would be thrown out as an offering, perhaps to, for example, in the case of Iron Age Wales, we know that people would maybe deposit to water spirits and gods, this kind of thing.
yeah,
Or it could even be, in the case of, for example, Arthurian legend, it could be that a sword is deliberately removed from humans, from the world of men, as it were, from the world of human beings, because it's deemed to be too powerful, or it's been cursed, or there's something dangerous about it. And actually, the act of recovering that sword can be kind of akin to either reclaiming that sword's identity or a sort of, for want of a better word, baptism. The sword is sort of it's washed away, or its previous associations, and it comes out fresh and new. So
that's
it ties in with all that stuff. It's really cool.
absolutely that certainly ties in with the Arthurian sword Excalibur, or Caliburn as it's called in the earlier
Mm.
Viking Arthurian stories, where the sword is Arthur's badge of office, if you like. The Lady of
Mm.
the Lake grants him the sword because he's the hero worthy to carry it.
Yeah.
And then, as he's dying on the Isle of Avalon, it's thrown back into the lake because nobody else is fit to carry it.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. So it's removed from 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 circulation. Incidentally, as well.
Just to finish this,
Uh-huh.
this particular segment, it's and again, it's such a human touch. It's but it also again touches on a number of the issues that we've that surround these chance finds of wonderful objects. Saga says, I had to give the sword to the local museum. Daddy explained that it's part of history and important to share it with others. I felt boo that it's gone, but yay, other people will get to see it. I'm going to try to raise some money to make a replica sword that I can keep. She's going to be a reenactor.
Oh, bless. Yeah, no, it's lovely. It's lovely, and
Yeah.
as you say, it's good to see this stuff being treated in the proper way. Wonderful.